what I want to know is, are you aware of where our knowledge of human anatomy comes from? Are you aware that it was grave diggers and others who got us there?
That's also not true. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Today we've got a review of the debate between AVG and WitchyBishy. This comes from the Culture Corrections channel. That channel is run by Beth Mayhew. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. So let's go ahead and get right into it.
We have WitchyBishy and AVG. I was looking for something while that was playing and I got totally distracted. Sorry. We are going to debate about eugenics tonight, so this should be interesting. Witchy, you're up first. We have 10-minute openings, but take your time. And faster, that's fine. AVG, quick question. Mm-hmm. Are you good with cams up or you good with cams down?
I just had to grab something. We're good. Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, by all means, go ahead, Witchy.
Okay, so I've been wanting to have this conversation for a good while, and I had heard AVG was going to have this debate with OG.
Oh, and I did not say it. This topic is eugenics.
And that didn't happen, and I was like, you know what? I would love, I had told her this before, I would love to talk about this with you because I have a very strong affinity for the idea of eugenics. And so I want to start out with, and we didn't necessarily agree upon this, but I did share it and it wasn't argued in our preliminaries. Just a brief definition of eugenics. Eugenics is the practice or advocacy of controlled selective breeding of human populations to improve the population's genetic composition. So essentially, anything we do to mitigate or improve on breeding practices is under the umbrella of eugenics. So the affirmative here tonight is eugenics improves society. So what I'd like to present are a few statistics related to how...
Okay, so her whole argument currently in this opening statement is that selective breeding, basically, that's what it boils down to, improves society. So let's just make that clear.
Crime rate have gone down post Roe v. Wade, post the Roe v. Wade, and that there are statistics of teen pregnancies down, including those that are aborted. Even with the abortions for teen pregnancies, we still have a lower pregnancy rate in teenagers since birth control and other forms of mitigation for pregnancy have been legalized.
Contraception.
One of these statistics shows that crime rates in the inner cities, I know a lot of people want to talk about how crime is rampant, but compare the crime rates in the 70s to the crime rates in, say, the 90s or 2000s, and those crime rates had dropped dramatically, and a lot of people attribute that to there were less unwanted children born. One of the things that people will note in psychological studies of criminals is whether they have something called ACEs or ACVs, adverse childhood experiences. And what...
Okay, I'm really hoping that she's going to actually get into some of those things because, yeah, the adverse childhood experiences, one of the major things about that would be not having a father in the home. And so part of the issue currently with what I have that she's saying is that she's quoting the statistics and then she's trying to tie them in with eugenics and, of course, with abortion. But the problem is she's doing the whole correlation does not equal causation, but she's trying to make it into correlation and causation. That's my current problem. I definitely don't have a problem with WitchyBishy. I've been in comments with her multiple times. She's commented on things when I've been on panels. So this is just a basic critique. I have nothing against her.
This is children who come into homes that are economically disadvantaged, low education, and possibly were unwanted, tend to veer into the criminal career path as opposed to a legitimate career path. They also tend to have more onset of mental illness in their adulthood. And these are things that highly affect the quality of life of people around them, not just the person. There is a societal effect of having these ACEs prevalent in our children. So
Okay, so the only reason I'm pausing it here is because I'm not sure how she's going to tie this in with the eugenics debate, since that is the topic. Now, the only thing I can think of is that she's going to tie in abortion in with this, and that if these children that were unwanted and had any problems that could be detected beforehand in the womb, if they were aborted, then they wouldn't have had those problems, clearly, because they wouldn't have been here. Or if these problems could have been detected and then through eugenics, genetic manipulation could have been corrected in the womb, then they wouldn't have these problems. Except the only counter to that is the fact that being born in poverty and some of the other situations that she has already described with these ACEs aren't things that you can just use gene manipulation on to go away. So I am wondering where she's going with it.
part of what eugenics does is opens up a door to the idea of planning for parenthood, not just taking a baby because you got pregnant. And we have in this country laws that allow birth control and other contraceptives to be made available to people. We have programs that make them available to the lower income and therefore mostly lower education persons. And we even have in our country federal laws through the Supreme Court that put us in a position where even minors can get a hold of these things without their parents' consent.
Right, but parental planning, literally planning your parenthood, that doesn't have anything to do with eugenics. That has nothing to do with planning the traits that your child is going to be born with. That has nothing to do with selective breeding whatsoever. What selective breeding would be more like in this instance that she's thinking about with eugenics would be selecting the desirable traits of a mate and then having a child with that person, trying to get the traits that you desire, such as having offspring that are tall, athletic. Maybe you want them to have blonde hair, blue eyes, if you are a certain type of person. Maybe you want red hair and green eyes if you are, a traditional Irish person. That's what eugenics is. You want the desirable traits that you want. And then, of course, that's also what she says is the improvement of society. You're going to need to also define the improvement of society, because that's going to be subjective, because not everybody is going to think the same thing is going to improve society, which is going to become probably very clear shortly. I can almost guarantee you WitchyBishy's definition of improving society, what she believes would improve society, is going to be vastly different from AVG's. AVG is a very patriarchal believer. I don't believe WitchyBishy is much of a supporter, but yeah, just a little more critiques that I wanted to point out. She's not talking about eugenics at this point. She's just talking about planning your parenthood, and then again, she's talking about these programs for low-income people. That's not going to get rid of the problem of being born poor. I mean, just to say it bluntly.
And I know a lot of people will say that, well, this breaks down the morals in a society. And I won't argue if it does or it doesn't. I think morals break down due more to leisure time and the accessibility of immoral, the paraphernalia, i.e. free porn on the internet, the accessibility of drugs in our society.
Okay, I can kind of agree with that point. Not fully, but I could see where she was going with that. Okay.
But I think that if we address the issue of unwanted pregnancy even more so, we can prevent a lot of these adverse long-term effects in our society through adults who've grown up without the support that they need, both financial, emotional, and educational. Another point I'd like.
Okay, but all she said was addressing the problem of teen pregnancy. But unless I've missed it, she didn't actually give any sort of prescription for that. All she gave was the descriptor of teen pregnancy and that it was a problem. Now, besides abortion, which is one thing that she mentioned, and contraceptives, which, I mean, yes, they will work 99% of the time, 98% of the time, depending on which one you're using, 96%. How about also teaching your kids just not to do it? I mean, yes, obviously, some kids are going to feel peer pressure from the person they're in a relationship with, things like that. Yes, it is definitely going to happen. Teaching your kids to be celibate until marriage is one of the best things you can do. Abstinence. But she doesn't mention it, and she doesn't mention that as a prescription. She just says there's a problem and then kind of goes to the next point.
Like to make is that we use eugenics frequently in the Western world through things like in vitro fertilization amniocentesis, in which the embryo is tested for negative, what we consider negative quality of life illnesses such as.
Now, amniocentesis is not really a part of eugenics. Amniocentesis is taking part of the amniotic fluid. And actually, I'm not sure about now, but it used to be relatively dangerous, considered a risky procedure back in the day. And what it does is it tests for genetic abnormalities, but that's not necessarily just so you can end up discarding the child or anything. That's so that you can literally plan ahead for the child's life.
Down syndrome. We've seen a very large drop in the births of children with Down syndrome due to using amniocentesis as a preventative measure. And we all.
Again, I want to say that's not accurate because amniocentesis doesn't prevent anything. It just gives you the diagnosis because you take the DNA from the amniotic fluid and you can analyze the DNA sequence to make sure if they have the chromosomes for Down syndrome. It's just seeing the genetic markers. It doesn't prevent anything.
Also have
Sorry, and I want to add that because of that, then, of course, with abortion having been freely available beforehand, parents could choose to simply abort the child rather than raise their child that has Down syndrome. So that could be a reason why Down syndrome births went down dramatically, because people were simply aborting their kid.
CRISPR, which I don't want to touch on too much because I didn't bring it up in my notes I recognized, but we might touch on that during the discussion if it's okay with AVG.
That's fair.
So we're already using technologies in order to better breed healthier, happier humans. A lot of people will talk about the quality versus the quantity of life, and some of the studies show that we have ways to extend the life of people who have some of these adverse genetic birth defects. But does the quality of their life or those around them who have to care for them go up due to these new technologies? Because when you're going to talk about life, making it longer isn't always better. Sometimes quality has to be considered. So my 3 points would be that we use eugenics, one, in preconception birth control in our country prolifically, in most of the Western world. We use eugenics in predetermination of the health of fetuses regularly, including ultrasounds and prenatal care and prenatal vitamins. And thirdly, the output, the outcomes of people who would be born from families who could support them properly would be improved over those who cannot. And I'll end it there.
Okay, so yeah, so far my main critique is that really nothing that she has stated actually has anything to do with eugenics, because none of that has to do with selective breeding whatsoever, number one. Number two, none of that really has anything to do with the betterment of society, because again, she didn't define the betterment of society, and that's also subjective, and therefore it doesn't really hold any meaning because it's going to be different for everybody. Again, it's nothing against her. I don't have anything against her. I'm basing it purely on her arguments.
Awesome. You came in perfectly. AVG, my dear, I'll hand it over to you.
Alrighty. So the prompt for today's debate is whether eugenics improves societies for the better. My position, which I will reaffirm through science and history itself, is that the history of the practice has actually degraded the humans who populate societies wherein it is practiced. The wielders of this tool have historically been evil individuals, devoid of humanity, and intent on the savage elimination of parts of the population that they deem undesirable. I'm talking about individuals such as...
She's probably going to use, let's see, I don't know if Mao did any eugenics, but let's see, probably Hitler. Then she's going with history. I believe Stalin did some eugenics, and I know there's a couple of other historical figures. Let's see who she mentions.
Margaret Sanger, a staunch racist and anti-natalist, and the leader of the Schmaltzy Party, Schmittler. Both of these individuals have the blood of millions of individuals upon their hands, all in the sake of bettering the population. As I anticipated, my opponent today is going to try and convince you that eugenics, specifically in the form of horrible things such as abortion and Planned Parenthood initiatives, is a positive thing that will improve humanity as a whole. She might cite studies where in rare clinical trials, individuals have used CRISPR to remove a single damaging gene, but these studies are just that. Actual gene editing is still in its clinical trial phase. The US has not even made it available, mostly due to the exorbitant costs of FDA clinical trial requirements. And whether CRISPR would actually benefit humanity, for example, by removing damaging genes for all in need, regardless of income and status, and would not have negative effects on the genetic diversity and immunity of the population in its execution, remains unknown. For my opponent to be successful today, she will have to convince you that not only is the supposed eugenics magic she speaks of so highly of in reliable, tested, proven, and accessible condition to all who need it, but she will also have to convince you that despite decades of misuse and torture of humans in the name of scientific progress, that now things will be different. Ladies and gentlemen, they will not. And with that, I cede my time.
All right, now, and also just to make sure that it's clear, because WitchyBishy is in the affirmative, she has to prove her case, whereas AVG simply has to make sure that WitchyBishy can't. So the affirmative almost always has an uphill battle to face here, and I'm not sure if Witchy is going to have a good time.
Nice. All right. So who since Witchy went first, would you like to question her first there, AVG? I'll hand it over to you for that. We'll do 5 minutes.
So Witchy, you seem to take a pretty Sanger approach in your treatment of things like Planned Parenthood, birth control, and abortion as a positive change for society. Can you tell me how that would be true when we're currently in a birth rate crisis?
So it already is true because we're not in a birth rate crisis. That birth rate crisis is propaganda. The fact of the matter is, with technology the way it is today, we have a large amount of the population, especially the underprivileged, who are living homeless with no jobs, and their only purpose is to serve as an example to the working class of this could happen to you.
Okay, I'm confused because that has nothing to do, homeless and unemployed has nothing to do with the actual birth rate. So I'm not quite sure where she's getting that logic from. So the replacement fertility rate for most developed countries is 2.1 births per woman, ensuring that each generation replaces itself, assuming constant mortality rates and zero net migration. Again, assuming constant mortality rates and zero net migration. Now we have the replacement rate for the United States is generally considered to be 2.1 per woman, which is the level needed to maintain a stable population. However, the total fertility rate has recently fallen below this level, reaching approximately 1.62 births per woman in 2023. Sounds like we are in a birth rate crisis.
So does that not indicate a problem with infrastructure for those individuals, and perhaps we're not focusing on the right things as opposed to a birth rate crisis? Like, just to give you an idea, a birth rate crisis is less than 2 per couple, right? So 2 per woman. It's currently at 1.6 in the United States. If that continues, there'll be about a 20 to 25% drop in population per generation. That means that we could lose, I guess, probably by down to 4 generations, it could be 140 to 160 million. It's currently 335 million. How is that not a crisis?
Because we don't need that many people anymore. We have the technology that we can't employ and maintain a population of that rate anymore. It's evidenced in the fact that there's a large amount of people who cannot fit into the society as it stands today. And a lot of those people wouldn't even have existed if their parents had to, say, make an effort to have a child instead of just drunkenly get laid with.
Okay, those are some really, really weird arguments. First off, there's plenty of room in the United States. There are whole swaths of places that are empty, number one. Number two, there are plenty of places in cities that are completely abandoned and run down that could be remade and hold plenty of people. So I don't understand her arguments here. I just look at sections of Chicago. Not actually sure about New York. It always seems to be pretty packed in New York. Chicago and San Francisco, LA, there are whole places that are simply abandoned. And yeah, there are squatters there, but there aren't people actually living in the buildings. And those are just 3 of the largest cities in the United States. That doesn't include any of the other cities that are smaller, but still hold plenty of people. And I'm not sure why she keeps going back to people just drunkenly getting laid. It's not the first time. Well, that is the first time she specifically mentioned that, but talking about people just having sex and popping out a baby. I mean, that's not exactly what AVG is talking about. She's talking about simply birth replacement. And of course, through her worldview, she's talking about a married couple. So it's not just going having a one-night stand and, I got pregnant.
Okay, so you're just going to blame it on individuals who aren't copulating to the correct nature. How do we determine who's copulating in the correct circumstance? Do we have to provide licensing requirements for individuals that choose to procreate?
I don't know that would have to be the situation. We've already shown improvement from eugenics just by doing it voluntarily. I mean, even our vaccines are voluntary here in the United States. You can opt out of them and still get your kids in public schools. You don't have to take them. And yet still like 87% of our kids are inoculated. Like, you don't have to force things. It's all about education. If you can educate people about how to better plan for their pregnancy, make the tools, like you said, accessible. Right now, things like amniocentesis are only available to select few. They'll need to be made available to more people.
Okay, but again, the parental planning tools, amniocentesis, none of that is eugenics. Amniocentesis is only available to a select few because it's not a regular procedure. You only get it if there is potentially something wrong, such as if you have a geriatric pregnancy, which is a woman who's over 35, and there is a concern that there may be some kind of genetic deformity or possible defect, and the doctors would really like to, check if there's some kind of potential abnormality, and there's other things, maybe there's genetic markers in your family or your spouse's family, or the father, mother, it's somewhere in your genetic makeup. It's not like anybody can just go, I want to get an amniocentesis, and just look at the genetic makeup of my child. That doesn't happen because it is considered a risky and invasive procedure. They take a long needle and stick it into the woman's stomach, into the placenta, to draw amniotic fluid. It's not exactly something that they just do. So I'm not understanding why she thinks that these things, number one, are eugenics, and number two, why she chose to use these things.
That's what I'm saying, is we don't have to take an approach of the quote Nazis. And even Margaret Sanger said this. You may talk down on her because Hitler took her ideas and corrupted them, but the fact of the matter is Margaret Sanger wanted to help people learn.
Margaret Sanger did not have good intentions. I don't know where you're getting your information for Margaret Sanger on, but she was an affiliate of the KKK. She spoke at multiple meetings for women. Her entire idea was incredibly antinatalist. She was of the view that people should just not have kids, and there's unfit individuals that just be sterilized. She argued that they should just be sterilized, not even give them the opportunity to have kids or to even go through eugenics processes. She just wanted to eliminate them. She was an evil woman. She was a racist woman, and she sought to degrade humanity. Like, to paint her as a hero is just baffling to me.
I guess it's a matter of perspective. I think Beth was indicating a minute. Did you have any other questions? I did.
Go ahead and give your last thoughts to her questioning.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you had any more questions, I went on a little bit. So if you had any more questions, I'm open to another one.
I mean, I can reserve them for open dialogue. Just keep the format on track.
Okay, yeah. Witchy, go right ahead. You got 5 minutes. Question AVG.
So at the end, you kind of snuck in there on your opening that I would have to prove that because eugenics has been used illegitimately and poorly in the past by bad actors, it wouldn't be in the future. So what I want to know is, are you aware of where our knowledge of human anatomy comes from? You recognize
I took a biology course in high school at the advanced level. I'm somewhat familiar with anatomy, but the origins of it, perhaps you can enlighten me.
Are you aware that it was grave diggers and others who got us there? So a lot of times in science, what you'll see is a lot of immoral.
That's also not true. So there may have been grave diggers, that stole bodies. There were still the doctors who were actually taking the corpses and dissecting them to figure out the anatomy. So she's actually disconnected the two ideas. Yeah, the bodies may have been stolen by the grave diggers, but they weren't actually performing the dissections. I just want to make sure there's a clear delineation there that she's tried to connect, but it's not true.
Act that lead to the greater good. So why would you think that just because one group misused eugenics, that eugenics itself is a poor practice?
Oh, because it wasn't just one group. Like, it wasn't just the schmozzies. In Mexico, there was groups of indigenous people that were sterilized. People in Canada and the United States of the indigenous nature have been sterilized. Black people, specifically through Planned Parenthood initiatives, have been sought to be basically taken out of the breeding equation.
Which was one of Margaret Sanger's goals. Look that one up.
Multiple societies have used this. It's not just one. It's every single society that's utilized eugenics so far on a bigger scale has done so for evil reasons, and it's been evil. There has been no good. It's eliminated people based on race and perceived unfitness for breeding. And we know that most of these diseases can be cured. For instance, Down syndrome used to have an incredibly low life rate expectancy. Now, most people with Down syndrome live to 70. If we had adopted a eugenics program to eliminate people with Down syndrome 20 years ago, we would have eliminated all of those people that would have lived otherwise perfectly healthy lives up until 70. That's the craziness of eugenics.
So my question then becomes, you brought up Planned Parenthood specifically and racism. Are you aware of the demographics of Planned Parenthood patients?
It's pretty.
Okay, so I know exactly what she's going to go into. I did catch part of this debate, and I think it might have been right after this question that I did catch it. So she's going to say that because AVG brought up Black people and Planned Parenthood, I believe she's going to go into the fact that white women use Planned Parenthood more. But the problem with that is the fact that white people make up roughly 65% of the United States. And so by pure numbers, yeah, that's going to be obviously more because there's just more white people. However, if you go by per capita, Black women are using Planned Parenthood on a much larger scale.
Pretty widespread now, but the initiative was primarily targeted in lower income neighborhoods. And then to my knowledge, that proceeds to be the majority of where the Planned Parenthoods are located and used.
Yeah, and the majority of low-income people in the United States, are you aware of the demographics of them?
And it's going to be the exact same thing. It's going to be white. Yeah, because there's, by pure numbers, more white people.
They are primarily non-white.
No, they are primarily white. There are more white poor people than any other group of poor people. There are more white people taking advantage of Planned Parenthood for their pap smears and their reproductive health help than any other group out there. The numbers show it. Now, if you take it to per capita, huh?
Oh, what?
Which yourself brought up per capita. Okay, well, let's see where it goes. This is not the section that I caught.
I was just wondering if that was in your sources. I didn't see it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I wouldn't bring it up if it wasn't. I made sure to put that in there because I knew you'd bring up Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger and racism. And the thing is Planned Parenthood from its very inception was for the poor people. And I agree, poor people should breed less.
Oh, I don't agree with that. What source is that? Sorry, in your notes section?
Yeah, that is actually kind of the horrible. Like, that's weird. Why should poor people breed less? Witchy, do you not understand that it's actually been poor people all throughout history that have bred the most? Like, they're the ones that have kept the actual population going. Even during medieval times, it was the poor people that would have 5, 6, 7, 10 kids. During the Dust Bowl, all throughout American history, it was all the poor people who were having 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids. All these stories about people, their grandparents, their great grandparents, they were, kid number 3 of 10, kid number 6 out of 13, and not all of them even died. It's almost always been poor people who have had all the kids. And no, that's not always because once the kids grew up, free labor, yeah, you expect your kids to help around the house. But that's not all it was for. Sometimes you just have kids because that's what you do when you're married, is you have kids. But, I just think that's a really odd way to put it, is that poor people shouldn't breed. Then should only the rich breed? Like, I'm not sure, because they're actually the people who breed the least. Look at those demographics.
I'm just trying to find it here.
Let me pull it up.
Yeah, I would love to see what she says about this.
The first 3 are for like crime and...
Oh, I'll see that it's not in my sources. I had opened another notepad and it's not in the one that I shared.
Okay.
So I'll see that for the moment.
It happens.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's true. I think actually my understanding is that Black women are the highest demographic for abortions. And I don't think...
During the open discussion, may I provide another source?
All right, so according to this, Black women have the highest abortion rates in the United States, almost 5 times that of white women, which reflects broader trends in reproductive health services, including those provided by organizations like Planned Parenthood. However, the specific per capita use of Planned Parenthood services by race is not clearly defined by any available data. This website here is liveaction.org. This says, nationally, Black women have the highest abortion percentage, rate, and ratio. The CDC 2019 abortion surveillance report shows that Black women had the highest abortion percentage, rate, and ratio. The data also indicated that Black Americans made up just 12.2% of the population. They accounted for 38.2% 38.4% of the abortions. Some believe this is by design due to decades of eugenic targeting by Planned Parenthood and others in the abortion and eugenics movement. So that's two blows right there to Witchy's argument. CDC data on race and ethnicity were gathered from 30 reporting areas, making it limited in scope. 22 areas were excluded. Some of these areas are known to have very high numbers of abortions. So no wonder they were cut out. 2019, while the percentage of abortions among white women fell 38.7% in 2018, 33.4% of all reported abortions in 2019, the percentage of abortions among black women increased over 14% when comparing raw numbers of black abortions year to year, and increased from 33.6% of all reported abortions of 2018 to 38.4% of all reported abortions in 2019, the highest percentage reported in several years. Live Action News previously documented that black Americans made up 12.2% of the population but accounted for 38.4% of abortions, for an estimated 241,880 abortions in 2019. A total of 548,075 black births were recorded in the U.S. in 2019, with an average of nearly 1,502 black babies born daily. So if you want to compare those two numbers, that is just under half this number, roughly 50%, a little less, maybe 40, you could just say 45%. I'm not actually going to do the math at this point, but yeah, in 2019, there were 23.8 abortions per 1,000 black women aged 15 to 44, 386 abortions per 1,000 live births. Black abortion rate was nearly 3.6 times higher than the white abortion rate, 28.3 versus 6.6, and twice as high as the Hispanic abortion rate, which is 23.8 versus 11.7. And the Hispanic rate at 11.7 is still almost double the white rate at 6.6. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Proceed with your question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So the other question I had about your response was you brought up Nazis. And do you not feel that a lot of people appeal to that word just for the negative effect that it has, even though the use of eugenics by the Nazis is not comparable to modern eugenics at all, which is voluntary?
So I didn't do it for that reason. I don't do appeals to emotion. I was referencing it because it was one of the most broadly recognized eugenics programs in semi-modern history.
So with that, have fun.
All right, so let's get back into it. We left off at the point about the Nazis and an alleged appeal to emotion. I don't need to specifically rely on that. Like I said, it's just they are a commonly known example, and it was in semi-modernity that it happened. So, did you have a point with that? Why people reference?
Well, it's just interesting that whenever something is distasteful to someone, they reference the Nazis, and what Hitler did was forced, and so. Now,
and that's not also necessarily true either, because through propaganda, many people volunteered. So I'm talking about, of course, the voluntary creation of what he was, considering the Aryan race. Obviously not the other side of it, because eugenics is two things. It's breeding, the selection part, and then it's the taking away of the undesirable traits. And so it's the second part, the taking away of the undesirable traits out of the gene pool, obviously is the non-voluntary part.
While my personal beliefs tend more to the tyrannical, I'll be honest and admit that here. The argument here is society improves. And the fact is it has through voluntary eugenics. You may quote a lowered birth rate, but that was the point. We have much lower rates of the adverse effects of having unwanted, unprepared families. When families aren't prepared to bring children into this world, that's a lot of suffering for both the family and the children and society.
Why can't they just give the kids up for adoption?
So
now that is a good point, because babies are the most adopted demographic. There are hundreds of thousands of people lined up to adopt babies. And of course, as a child gets older that's up for adoption, the less likely they are to be adopted. So it's a great point.
I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, we have a large number. I won't quote a number because I didn't put any statistics in, but we have a large number, and it's That's well fair. Known, of children in the system who don't get adopted and aren't put into safe and happy, healthy homes. We also have a shortage of,
Are those babies?
Some of them start as babies, especially those who are born addicted or born with severe health issues. People don't want a baby that's going to keep them up crying for 6 months the way a crack baby will.
Yeah, that would be the exception though. Like by far and large, babies are the most adopted, and it's pretty rare that healthy babies, stay in the adoption system for very
Healthy
long.
babies. How many poor people have a good diet, don't use drugs or drink, don't smoke cigarettes, live in a healthy neighborhood, get good exercise, get proper prenatal care, including prenatal vitamins. I mean, you may have grown up in a...
Okay, except the only thing that she actually just mentioned that truly impact the baby's health is the diet of the mother and potential use of drugs. That's it. I mean, yes, the use of nicotine as well. I would include that in the drugs part, but normally when you say drugs, people are obviously thinking hard drugs such as cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, things like that. But everything else, generally speaking, is not really going to affect the baby's health enough that they are going to be one of those kids that is going to have extreme health problems and is not going to get adopted in the hypothetical that she supposed. So that doesn't really hold up.
Neighborhood where those things are really available because Canada has a different sort of healthcare.
And also that everything that she mentioned already about Planned Parenthood and the Supreme Court, and legislature, that all these programs for free prenatal care is practically free for mothers, especially poor people. Poor people can get on Medicaid very easily, and they can get those prenatal vitamins for next to nothing. If not, it's like $5 a month or 30 days worth of medicine. It's the exact same thing as the argument for condoms. Poor people can't afford condoms. You can go down to the county health center, get a doctor's appointment as a man or a woman, pay the sliding scale fee as a poor person, and then when they ask you the question, do you have unprotected sex? If you say yes, they give you condoms. If you say no, they give you condoms. It's that simple. You get them for free. They will give you a whole bag. Ask me how I know. Hint, no, I've actually never been to one of those, but I know people who have. That's how I know.
System than the United States. But in the United States, especially in lower income countries, most of these babies that I'm talking about wouldn't be born healthy. They're not having the kind of prenatal...
Okay, but again, healthy, you're trying to squeeze it into one category. Healthy is actually a very large scale. You don't always have to have prenatal vitamins. Prenatal vitamins did not exist for the majority of history. It's just a thing that we have now that goes to help give better nutrients to a developing baby. But they're not required for the baby to be born healthy. You don't even have to have a truly good diet, just a decent diet as a mother in order to make sure that your baby has those nutrients. But in order to give the best advantages to a developing baby, the mother should have a good diet and take the prenatal vitamins. The baby can still be healthy either way. And I think that's part of what she doesn't understand is the standards of care that we have now are so far removed in people's minds in modernity from what things used to be even 30, 40, 50 years ago. They were not the requirements for the majority of history. On the time scale of history, it's been 10 seconds.
Support they need, and they won't have the postnatal support that they need either.
So only babies that are exposed to things like excessive cigarette smoke, alcohol, and illegal drugs are going to be negative.
Well, I believe that's pretty much exactly what I said.
Impacting the womb by far and large. Babies are incredibly resilient. You can eat semi-poorly and still have a decently healthy kid. It takes quite a bit to have an unhealthy baby. And the conditions that you're talking about, which would make a baby undesirable for adoption, I'm talking, like you said, like crack babies. That's not going to be the rule. Poor people are just not all high on crack. That's just not a reality that occurs.
Yeah, but the ones who want to give up their kids are going to be more likely to be the ones high on crack. Most poor people can still support their families, and they don't participate in the eugenics. You won't see these families that have 5 kids.
Okay, so again, this is about the argument. I have nothing against her. So the poor people who don't want to participate in the eugenics and they're going to be able to support their families are going to be giving up their kids. So then what's the point of talking about poor people and eugenics and you commenting that they shouldn't breed? Like at this point, then it's just about how you feel about it rather than why you think that it should be the way that you think it should be. I don't quite understand your reasoning. You're going back now to this is just why I think it should be rather than giving actual reasons.
That are raising them beautifully go out and get birth control, except for maybe after the 5 kids, because, 5 is enough. What I'm talking about is a voluntary system that we have in place.
Yeah, but 5 might be enough in your mind. But what if somebody wants to have 6 kids, 7 kids, 8 kids? It's not up to you. This is the same thing with the whole for the benefit of society. You're putting in a subjective argument that's not up to you. It's interpretive.
Place that has shown a drastic improvement in our society here in the United States. We are using eugenics already. Like, it's not like this future plan of imposing eugenics on you all. No, we have it available today. It's on a voluntary basis, and it is paying off. It is.
Once again, no, we're not. Actual eugenics isn't happening. Now, even like Planned Parenthood and abortions is not actual eugenics. It's eugenics-like, because true eugenics would have to happen on a larger scale. Planned Parenthood was Margaret Sanger's plan to enact eugenics, and she had planned on putting these things here to trick Black people and other poor people into having abortions and to eventually breed them out of the gene pool so they would no longer be here. But thankfully, that's not what happened. However, voluntary eugenics is not actually a thing. Even IVF is extremely limited in what you could call eugenics. What you have to do for true eugenics is to map out the entire gene sequence, then be able to pick out your traits, and then be able to edit them and then put them inside of the fetus, or combine them in order to make the fetus have the traits that you want, so that when it grows up, it has those traits. Of course, on the basic scale of eugenics, talking about just selective breeding, I mean, we've been doing that, of course, with dogs and cats for years, and of course those are animals, not humans, and so the ones with the undesirable traits we simply kill. But we don't do those with human beings because, well, human beings, at least not anymore. And so it's a different case. We don't do selective breeding like that with people, but that seems to be like what you're advocating for in kind of a roundabout way, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure if you've thought about that.
Working out for the benefit of our society.
So if we define working out and paying off as eliminating parts of the population.
Okay, I was wondering when she was finally going to ask about this. It's been my own real critique about AVG so far. I thought she would ask it sooner.
To the point where we're below replacement rate, then absolutely that would make it better for societies, better for horrible societies that can't sustain their population and the infrastructure crumbles within decades. The second point that you made, remind me what, the societies, it depends on who uses it. Well, I'm glad that you mentioned this, and this is where Hitler comes into play. Hitler took over a government in Germany of just out of nowhere. The guy is a relative political unknown, and he utilized force doctrine, right, to impose all kinds of restrictions and to unalive millions of people, right? So if you say like, okay, that's not possible in North America, well, technically that's possible anywhere because it can happen. An authoritarian leader with sufficient backing and power and radical ideas can step in and utilize a technology if it's made available to the public.
Well, they could do that right now. I mean, we certainly have the tech to do that right now if they...
Well, that was AVG's point. That's what she just said.
They wanted to. The point is we already are using eugenics, and the use of it thus far has improved society in the United States. We have lower crime rates. We have lower teen pregnancy rates. We have lower suicide rates than we had in the 70s. Like,
none of that is true. First off, before I actually get to the 70s, let's real quick look at this. The entire United States. This is just California. It's a comparison, but this is just the first one I pulled up. The United States is this red line right here. This is in 1992. So from here to here is the 90s. See that big spike right there? Yeah, that was in the 90s. And of course, yeah, it went down, but it went down for a multitude of reasons. Oh, look at this. 2000, violent crimes in the U.S. But it was still all the way up here in 2000. Oh, wait, 1970. 1970 is right here. 300 incidents per 100,000 people. 2020, over here at 400. So we absolutely do not have a lower crime rate now than we did in the 70s. And let's see, the source for this one is, Federal Bureau of Investigation Uniform Crime Reporting Statistics. So that's where this comes from. The state by state and national crime estimates by years. So yeah, fairly certain that just blows her whole argument right there out of the water. See here. Now again, this is the unaliving rate. 70s. All throughout the 70s, it looks pretty steady at, what is that, 13 per 100K. Look at that. And then 2014, because it dips around 2000. Gee, I wonder what happened between 1990 and 2000. The 90s were really a good time. And then 2000 hits. And then, oh, look at that. Oh, back up. This is 2014, of course. I'm going to have to find another one that expands off on that. A little higher, actually. Now, these are the teen rates since the 50s. So let's see here. These are just the teen rates, about 6 in the 70s. Go all the way here to the 010s, almost at 8. Now, those are just teen rates, of course. Let's see where else. Here we go. Oh, look at this. The male and the female rates. The middle section here is the total. This is the 80s. So let's see here. In the 90s, it's going down. Here's 2000. Starts coming back up. Look at that. That's almost 15. Up from, was that about 12 and a half to almost 15. And of course, male rates were over there at 20. Female rates were just above 5. Now the male rates are over here at, looks like 23 and a half. Female rates, oh wait, still just above 5. Here's another one. The rate has increased by 30.3% over the past 20 years. Just before 2000, just after 2020, only gone up. Everything's trending up. All right, and the last one, teen pregnancy. Let's see. Well, no, that one does actually look true. Oh, look at that. That could also be, of course, due to the increased amount and availability of contraceptions. Glad to see those numbers down at least. Yeah, there we go. There's a good accurate one. Just below 100. Down here, about, what is that, 57? That's good. That's one I can get behind. Definitely. Keep it going down. There's another one. Good. I'm glad for that one. But that still doesn't prove that it's any kind of eugenics. Because, once again, contraception is not part of eugenics specifically. Because she's talking about that being part of selective breeding. Not unless you make it a part of a selective breeding program in order to prevent a specific demographic from reproducing. And that's kind of where the delineation lies, because it has to be purposeful. Whereas teen pregnancy is simply an entire group of people, not singling out a specific kind, other than, of course, the demographic of teens, and saying we don't want them to get pregnant. However, once they reach adulthood, they're adults. They can get pregnant if they want. And so that doesn't fall into the category of eugenics specifically, because you're not preventing them from getting pregnant ever. It's just between these ages, because it's not moral, ethical, it's not appropriate, etc.
If you really look at this, these are things that are just a result of many factors, but one of them being the availability of birth control and abortions. And that is eugenics.
That's what I commented on, but that's still not eugenics. Let's see what you have to say.
Planned breeding, that is changing the course of breeding through an action that I can take. Now, abstinence.
Now, that's not planned breeding. It's not changing the course. Again, that's a preventative measure, but it's not permanent. And that's, again, part of the problem. Like I stated a few minutes ago, eugenics would be either specifically breeding for the desired traits, prevention of the undesired traits. It's an actual program. It's a thing that you do, and it's purposeful and it's targeted. That is what eugenics is. She actually stated that in the very beginning, that eugenics was targeted, and of course would be for the betterment of society, whereas using contraception is random because anybody can do it if they want to, and it's widespread, wholesale, so none of that has to do with eugenics.
We can talk about that too. I agree we should be preaching abstinence more than anything, but we could talk abstinence till we're blue in the face. I have 2 teenage girls. I do not delude myself into thinking that my talking about abstinence or the school talking about abstinence is what's going to get them to be abstinent. That's going to be a personal choice inside themselves. And just like the eugenics we have available in our society are by choice, they aren't forced. And so long as it remains by choice, they do benefit society.
So the lowering of teen pregnancy rates, yeah, absolutely. There's going to be lowering of that because we're giving like young girls at the age of 16 birth control that's going to permanently mess up their bodies and their hormone cycle for the rest of their life and might even affect their ability to get pregnant. In terms of the lowering of the crime rates, I'd like to give the credit for that to President Donald John Trump. Donald John Trump has lowered the crime rates in the United States. As we well know, it has nothing to do with less people. And if it does, maybe it's just because there's less people around because of horrible abortions.
I love you, but my statistics, and I stated these dates intentionally, were from 1970 to the late 90s, early 2000s, because I didn't want to bring politics into this. And I recognize you're a Trump supporter. So I just wanted to be clear that it's over decades, and these decades are the same decades where these legal forms of eugenics were made available to the public and were given out.
Right. Like I said, the only thing that she was actually right on in those statistics is the teen pregnancy falling. The other two were incorrect. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop it here, and I'm going to save the rest because it's about halfway through for part 2. So if you made it this far, please go ahead and stick around for part 2. Make sure you go ahead and give this a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share it. Have a great day.